because you touched on this as well, Carl, that sort of person-centered approach. And I'm not sure if you do training. I know you do some education within your charity. So can you just sort of talk to us a little bit about how clubs and sports can ensure that they are putting the person at the center of their approach rather than maybe the label or whatever else it might be that they're doing at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does start with awareness and a true understanding, and probably challenging assumptions and stereotypes, and like Lucy said, using a label as a guide, and just asking questions. And I think of it like you're coming from kind of two in terms of communication, like communication is the key to understanding, but seeing it is you're coming from kind of two different places and you have to try and meet in the middle. Really understanding that and thinking about how you can meet that person halfway. So whether that be thinking about the environment, for example, understanding that person might not know what they need, but if you want to go on that learning journey with them, put them at ease, make sure they don't feel like they're in trouble or they've done something wrong, make sure the environment isn't really distracting and that they feel like they can trust you and they can talk to you. And, they're not, I think a big thing in sport, I know we're not just talking about high performance sport, but a big thing in high performance sport is people don't want to talk about what they struggle with because they're worried about the consequences. So I think paying real consideration to that and making sure people explicitly understand, look, I'm not going to use this as a stick to beat you with. I appreciate that you're here, even though you're kind of secretly dealing with all of this stuff. Like, imagine how good you could be if I helped you with that, and kind of get them to really, I say get them to trust you, but be trustworthy as well. Don't just get them to trust you if you're not actually going to be on their side. But yeah, it's about going part way and really trying to understand and building environments in which people feel psychologically safe, I would say, is probably the start.
And do you think there's not only, as you said, in sort of elite performance and right down to grassroots, but do you think there's a stigma in place at the moment that stops people coming forward to ask for help? I think that's probably in many sort of guys, especially within sport. I mean, that would, especially high performance, like you said, but I can imagine that is a major issue.
Yeah, absolutely. It's different between the different conditions. I'd say the most stigmatized is autism. I'd just say it how it is. I think partly it's because with something like ADHD, people assume that there is a treatment or a cure. And even that's not necessarily the case. Someone doesn't just take a tablet and suddenly they don't have ADHD. But yeah, I think with autism, there's this kind of stereotype of somebody's different, they're difficult, they're less than. And I definitely get a lot of, like, the way that the two are approached is very different. So I might get like a lot of athletes sort of secretly come to me and say, thank you for what you're doing. This has filled me with confidence. I haven't told my coach. I'm not ready to tell my coach. But I just wanted to let you know that. And it's such a shame because these athletes are on Olympic teams, but they're not telling their coaches, or if they do tell their coaches then tell them not to tell anyone else because it's something to be ashamed of. So yeah, that's, I'm if I'm anything, I'm honest. So you asked me a question and I answered you very honestly. That's the situation.
Honesty is always a good thing, I think, in these situations, isn't it, as well? And Helen, if you come to you at this point as well in your sort of research, have you found sort of evidence of particular approaches for sports to make themselves more inclusive and accessible in this area?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the research more broadly, I would say that there is a shift, but I think the more that, once I started researching this, the more you look, the more you will find. However, in terms of traditionally, it's still very under-researched and there's not enough. So if you look, and I know we might have people from NGBs on here, If you look at sort of traditional training or coach education, badges, etc., even you know, degrees, the amount on disability more broadly, which is huge, and that doesn't necessarily overlap with neurodivergence, etc. But the training is very, very limited. I think if I could just go back to what you're saying about sort of that, you know, that raising awareness, I think there's people need to appreciate that they need to, you know, why should I raise awareness about this? Why is it important to us and our club, etc. And I think, you know, sport is just a system in society, so it mirrors what is happening in society, and more nuanced. And certainly we're talking about high performance sports, certainly, and we could argue that actually it's quite a toxic culture in certain situations. So as Caragh mentioned before, quite rightly, you know, I don't want to disclose that I'm neurodivergent. I don't want to disclose that I'm autistic. For many, many years as, you know, a child in education, you know, that shame, that stigma that you mentioned. So to suddenly expect people to start saying, you know, I'm neurodivergent, I'm dyslexic, etc., is a huge step. Thanks to people like Caragh who are really championing that now, that's where we can see those changes. But it will take a long time. So baby steps, but it's great that these sort of forums are here to talk about it.